Hello, this webinar is titled U.S. Constitution Studies, Key Features of the U.S. Constitution. George Washington said this on cherishing and protecting the Constitution on his farewell address, which was actually given on Constitution Day, September 17, 1796. Profoundly penetrated with this idea, I shall carry it with me to my grave as a strong incitement to the unceasing vows that the free Constitution, which is the work of your hands, may be sacredly maintained, that its administration in every department may be stamped with wisdom and virtue, that the happiness of the people of these states under the auspices of liberty may be made complete by so careful a preservation and so prudent a use of this blessing, as will acquire to them the glory of recommending it to the applause, the affection, and the adoption of every nation which is yet a stranger to it. And so in these first few sentences, what he is saying is that the Constitution would be protected, maintained, and honored, that all levels of government would be run with wisdom and virtue, that the people would cherish the true blessings that this constitutional republic is, and then lastly, that they would realize that these principles of freedom are a gift to the world, and that the United States is to cherish that gift so that the gift of liberty would be constantly available to the world in future days. To finish this quote, he says this, "For it is the main pillar in the edifice of your real independence, the support of your tranquility at home, your peace abroad, of your safety, of your prosperity, of that very liberty which you so highly prize." And so George Washington was commending the Constitution to us on Constitution Days, that we would cherish it and protect it deeply. So in this webinar, we are going to take a look at 5 key features of the United States Constitution. The first is the separation of powers. We'll look at delegated and limited powers, the balance of powers, checks on power, and enumerated powers. So to begin with, let's take a look at the separation of powers. George Washington said this about government. Government is not reason, it's not eloquence, it's force. Like fire, it's a dangerous servant and a fearful master. The government is force, it's coercive power. It must be constrained, it's dangerous, and it cannot be allowed to be concentrated. James Madison put it this way about tyranny. Tyranny is the accumulation of all powers, legislative, executive, and judiciary, in the same hands, whether of one, a few, or many, and whether heredity, self-appointed, or elective. This may be justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. And he is the chief architect of the Constitution. And so the founders truly believed in the separation of powers, that it couldn't exist in a single individual or group of individuals. And so they separated the powers out, not concentrated in one form, but divided amongst 3. They divided those powers into the legislative branch, which we call Congress, and they make laws, into the executive branch, which we call President, that enforces the law, and the judicial branch, which we call the Supreme Court at the federal level, which applies the law to unique situations. One last interesting thing about the separation of powers is this. The 3 branches are designed to be physically separated in D.C. That is, that there's some distance to either walk or in that time period ride in a carriage to really consider what they're about to enact, whether it be a law or something from the executive branch or the judicial branch. Washington, D.C. was initially remote from the rest of the country. New York City lobbied hard to be the head of the federal government, and they even named New York City Town Hall to be called Federal Hall right before Washington's inauguration there, as a ploy to have New York City become the seat of federal government, which it actually was for the first year of our country's existence, before it was moved to Philadelphia and then eventually to Washington, D.C. Second of all, the delegated powers. The delegated powers create a limited list of powers for each branch. So each branch has powers assigned to it. In Congress, these would be the list: to borrow and coin money, to regulate commerce, to regulate immigration, to set up post office and roads, to create an environment for good commerce, to maintain an army, navy, and militias, to declare war, to conduct impeachments, to oversee the District of Columbia, and to make laws limited to the 6 purposes of the Constitution in these areas that are listed above. In the executive branch, the President has a shorter list of powers in summary, and they are to be Commander-in-Chief, to appoint ambassadors, judges, and officers, to enforce the laws of the United States, to sign treaties and receive ambassadors, and to grant pardons, and to give the State of the Union to Congress. The judicial branch has the smallest number of powers assigned to it, and those are to take appeals from citizens, courts, and states, to make principled judgments, to ensure jury trials, and to uphold the Constitution. So this was the idea, a limited list, not an ever-expanding and growing list, which we've seen over the last 100 years. The delegated and limited power means that each branch has a list of things they are assigned to do. If they are not on this list, they do not have authority to act, and for maximum freedom, this list should be small and limited. Let's take a look at balance of powers. Well, each branch has its list. Let's take a visual look at the Constitution itself to further assess the balance of powers. In the Constitution itself, the blue area that I've highlighted here shows the legislative branch of our government, the Congress, and it lists first the House of Representatives and then the Senate. And you can see that this is the biggest set of colored blocks. The second branch listed in the U.S. Constitution is that of the executive or president, and this block of responsibilities and list of powers is less so. And then the third block, as far as the branches of government, is the judicial branch, or the Supreme Court, which is the smallest block of all. I'd like to submit to you that the flow of the Constitution gives us an idea of the balance of powers, but how those balances have slight preferences. The House of Representatives listed first because it's closest to the people, the Senate second, the executive third, and the judicial branch fourthly, when you consider the two branches of the legislation. And so what this would look like on the scale is the legislative would be weighed here, and then the executive and the judicial branch, even though there's a balance of powers, there's a slight favoritism shown toward the legislative branch. So this balance of powers can be summarized in this way. Each branch is given a set of powers. For the most part, this set of powers is balanced, but they're not perfectly balanced. There's a very slight hierarchy in powers from House to Senate to President to Supreme Court. All right, let's move along to the fourth key feature, and that's checks on power. Well, let's remove the scale. Let's separate these branches out to give us some room to work. Let me condense the titling on each of the branches down to these simple things and then make this comment. We saw earlier that each branch is given a limited list of things that they can be involved with. If you look at each branch as a container of power, this limited list is supposed to act like the container. It's not to be like a baby swimming pool that is soft and pliable, where power and this list can expand. It's as Washington said, that government's not reason or eloquence, it's force, it's like fire. So this limited list is, as I said, not to be like a pliable baby pool, but more to be like a fire ring. And so the first check and balance that I'd like to make note of by how I've colored the buckets of the branches of government themselves is the list. The list of delegated responsibilities is supposed to be a check on power. Now let's take a look at the checks system, where there's checks and balances between the branches. Congress controls the budget. It approves nominations. It can override presidential vetoes and even remove presidents via the impeachment process or as a part of that. The president can veto legislation from Congress. The Congress's check on the Supreme Court is that it can remove judges or limit judges' jurisdiction. The check on the Congress by the Supreme Court is that it can declare laws as unconstitutional. The president has a check on the Supreme Court in that the president nominates judges. The Supreme Court has a check on the president where it can declare acts as unconstitutional. And so there's other items in place, but this kind of gives you a summary idea of how the checks systems work. So let me summarize what I've talked about so far. The branch itself and the list that they are to operate in serves as a check on power, and then the check system between the branches serves as a check on power. There's a third check on power, and that's the preamble of the Constitution. The preamble of the Constitution is 52 words, and it lists the overall purposes of the federal government, and that is to form a more perfect union, to establish justice, to ensure domestic tranquility, to provide for common defense, to promote the general welfare, and to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. And so to establish justice means the federal court system. To ensure domestic tranquility means that the nation would be at peace. To provide for common defense means national defense. And so this preamble of the Constitution really serves as a check on all the other activities that the President, the Congress, and the judiciary are involved in, because even though each branch has those list of things they can do, they have to fall under these general parameters. And so that's the third check on the Constitution, the preamble itself. A fourth check comes at the end of the Constitution, is called the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights was adopted as a part of the process of the approval of the Constitution, and I'd like to highlight both the first part of the Bill of Rights, which we call Amendment 1, and Amendment 10. Amendment 1 says this: Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or the freedom of press, or the right of the people to peaceably to assemble and to petition their government for a redress of grievances. The 10th Amendment in the Bill of Rights says this: the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. And so what that amendment is basically saying is that anything not on the list of activities that the federal government can be involved in is by default left for either the states or the people respectively. And so that's a fourth check on federal power, the Bill of Rights. The last one I'd like to highlight is the states themselves. We actually have a constitutional check and balance through the state system. We've got a national government that has a set of checks and balances, and this is displayed on the top of this blue panel. That's the U.S. Constitution. But we also have state governments and county governments that are a part of our checks and balance system. And so there's a vertical checks and balance system, which includes the states operating as many republics, and then the counties operating as many republics, and those serving as a vertical checks and balance system as well. And we actually have some additional training videos at this YouTube channel and at U.S. Civics Training on this very topic. And so the checks on power are the containers themselves. They're designed to be rigid, not pliable. The built-in check system, where two branches check another. The preamble of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, particularly the First and 10th Amendment in the Bill of Rights, and then the state legislatures, governors, and Supreme Courts all serve as checks on the federal Constitution and on the federal government. Now let's take a look at the last key feature, enumerated powers, which simply means that the powers are written down. They are written down, therefore they're made very clear. This means they're available to the citizens to use to keep the government in check, but this is no good if citizens are lazy or do not have the courage to enforce this list. There's been other constitutional systems, the British one as one example, where the common law was not written down in a constitutional format, and so although it was understood, it was harder for citizens to reference and to keep the government accountable. The U.S. constitutional system improved upon that and wrote it down so that it would be eminently clear. So as I conclude, let me add these quotes and concepts here. The founders had a clear understanding of the nature of man, that all men have a fallen nature, and that when you put fallen men in office, you need to constrain their quest for power. Historian Cleon Skosin said it this way: government consists of nothing more than a conglomeration of human beings who have within their basic nature the instinct to continuously expand whatever power is placed in their hands. This is true not only of evil men, but of public-spirited men as well. Concluding with a quote from Madison and Jefferson, Madison said this: if men were angels, no government would be necessary, and Jefferson reflected thusly: it would be a dangerous delusion were confidence in the men of our choice to silence our fears for the safety of our rights. That confidence is everywhere the parent of despotism. Free government is founded in jealousy and not in confidence. It is jealousy and not confidence that prescribes limited constitutions to bind down those whom we are obliged to trust with power, that our Constitution has accordingly fixed the limits to which and no farther our confidence may go. In the question of power, then, let no more be said of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution. And so I hope this has been helpful to look at these 5 key aspects of our U.S. Constitution: the separation of powers, limited powers, balance of powers, checks on powers, and enumerated powers. Please pass this along and share with others so that more people can understand our unique constitutional system. My name's Craig Seibert. Thanks for listening.